in Baltimore. Ball late into the evenings and late into the afternoons. The Orioles smack dab in the middle of this West Coast swing that certainly has not defined them yet. However, Seattle is next stop, and this guy is in Portland. He's our rock and roll brother from another mother and the guitarist for the band Shoot the Thrill in Portland, Oregon. He's also Bizball Mari out on Twitter as well as at Forbes, where he writes about the business of baseball. So you know he and I get along very, very well talking the business of baseball. What's going on, Mari Brown? How's life out there in Portlandia? I saw it's like polar bears rolling around in ice and stuff. That's making its way back on the cable news feeds, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, actually, today was the first rain that we'd had in like 58 or 60 days.
Since I left town.
And it just enough to clear out all the smoke that had been blowing down from as far away as British Columbia, Canada. So it's actually very nice here today, and it's kind of a little bit cooler. You know, it's not cold. It's, you know, just nice. We get a little break from the heat, so it's been nice, man.
Well, you know, the news on Sunday evening led with political unrest there stemming from Charlottesville out in the Seattle area, and the Orioles go into Seattle here. You know, I guess the country, based on what happened over the weekend, there's a lot of this and a lot of that. I saw that in Seattle. I thought to myself, they're going to go in there and play baseball games this weekend. I've talked to some folks out there. The Seahawks are all the rage. You know, the Mariners have managed to at least be relevant here, right, into August, and maybe that's even against guys like you that have watched them for a couple of decades now with very, very mixed reviews lately. This is as good as it's been lately. It's still not very good, but they are in the race like all the rest of these teams that we find it hard to believe that they're in the race.
Yeah, I do, and there's a number of reasons why it's somewhat surprising that they've done it. Ryan Divish put out an interesting stat that happened on Sunday, which was it was the 47th time that a starter did not go 5 innings or more in a game, and that really does not bode well for them down the stretch. The bullpen is really being stretched out very hard. We saw this with Diaz closing the other night. They pitched him on 3 consecutive days, and he basically blew it. And so I think that, you know, it's one of these things to where there is no real strong contender. It's going to be whoever is streaky at the end here for this AL wild card race. And that, I think, makes it, you know, I think this is the thing that Bud Selig in his infinite wisdom thought about with the wild card. You know, I mean, if I was looking, and with me being out here and watching the Mariners in the AL West, if it was just divisional races, there would be no one would be watching it. The Astros are absolutely running away with it. The Dodgers are doing much the same with the NL West. So this allows for some interest in, and we're going to find out really with the Orioles right there how they do on the road. And
dude, this thing couldn't be any tighter. I mean, it's like everyone is either backed up or pushed up, right? Like the Angels have kind of come on strong. The Twins have kind of come on strong. Kansas City kind of fallen apart. Seattle's always seemingly been within 3 games of 500. At least it's felt that way to me. The Orioles have now inched back into this thing. And just when you thought Tampa saw some daylight 4, 5, 6 games over 500, they're back below 500 again. You know, it's a little maddening in that these teams stink, but to your point, hope is alive in Baltimore, Tampa, Minnesota, Kansas City, Los Angeles, and Seattle for essentially one spot, right? I mean, I don't know that we're going to seed the Yankees this thing, but it certainly feels like they've been a cut above all year, even though they've been scuffling of late.
Yeah, and I think that's really pretty much spot on. You know, and this is I was having a discussion with somebody that actually is involved in broadcast in one of the AL teams, and he made a pretty astute observation that there are some very, very good teams, and there's a lot of mediocrity, and that, I think, really kind of speaks to where we're at. You know, you mentioned it. I mean, the Mariners have been like a game or two or a game above 500, and they just really are hovering around that, and the fact that they have been right there with it, and the Orioles are kind of in the same boat. The bad thing for the Orioles is that they're not exactly great on the road. I think they're 23 and 37 on the road, and that does not bode well for them as they go out and face Seattle. Seattle, of course, is going to be very upset. They did not do well against this series against the Angels, and if you're an Orioles fan, here's where your hope is. So I mentioned it up front that the starters haven't gone very deep. That means that if you can basically get to the starter and knock them out and really try and get into the bullpen, it's just really been kind of a battle of attrition for whoever can really kind of stick it out. And extra inning games really, I think at this point, will hurt Seattle. So, look, the Orioles could easily do something here, but they haven't historically done well this season on the road. So it's going to make an interesting dynamic. I don't think it's going to be any kind of like barn-burning series, but I think it's exceptionally important given where we are in terms of the schedule and the fact that we're starting to creep up on the end of the year.
Well, you won't have to stay up late on Wednesday. It is an afternoon game at 3:40 on Wednesday, but the late nighters on Monday and Tuesday. And for any Orioles fan, you start to see some old friends, not the least of which is Nelson Cruz, who we still, I guess there's a little payback, right? I mean, if you're a Mariners fan, do you harbor angst about Adam Jones and Chris Tillman? Maybe, right? I guess.
Well, it's
been a little while, right?
Adams Jones is always very hard to watch if you're a Mariners fan because, of course, it was a fantastic prospect, and we didn't get what we really needed out of it.
Well, we've watched Jake Arrieta here the last couple of years, so touche, okay?
Yeah. So there's always that, right? There is always that, but I think
there's always angst about the former Flames, right, Maury? I mean, that's just the way it goes.
The former Flames is the good way to put it. Nelson Cruz that'll be kind of an interesting story, given where he was at with Baltimore, and we always have that conversation when either they visit Baltimore or Baltimore comes to visit. Certainly, there's always that conversation when he's in Texas or Texas comes to visit. But I do get to this situation to where. I think you mentioned it. Teams seem to be bobbing up and down. I mean, I don't know if anybody really saw the Angels in the wild card race even as much as a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, and then they come raging up to the standings and knock the Mariners. And the bad thing about the series with the Mariners and the Angels was a couple of these games were late inning losses, and that was very painful for those that were following the Mariners. But in terms of Baltimore, it's clearly one of those situations to where they can make some hay here, but I really think that the problem once again is going to be that idea that they just have not done well on the road. They seem to have kind of they didn't dominate the A's, and the A's of course are in a complete rebuild mode like they always seem to be. So if you can't dominate the A's and you're just getting splits at this point. I think that's going to be a problem for Baltimore.
The Friday loss in Oakland was kind of costly. I mean, when you're snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory against, I was watching the game late into the night. On that night, I said to my wife, I'm like, this is the worst team in baseball, probably. I mean, then I looked up the Phillies, and I sort of see where the Giants. I mean, there's some, but there is, and the White Sox have been as bad as anybody, but they're bad, and they did swing the bats a little bit over the weekend. If there is a sign of life out in Oakland, but the Seattle team's really gotten kicked in the crotch this week, right? I mean, a week ago you looked up and you're like, whoa, maybe they're going to be the team. I mean, they just got chopped down by the Angels this weekend.
Well, they did, and and one of the big outstanding questions right now is the health of James Paxton, who of course has been an AL Cy Young conversation. I think that it's obviously going to come down to Sale and Kluber probably, but he's right there in that conversation. And he was at about 105 pitches in his last outing, and he had, all of a sudden, you could just see him. He was, like, starting to wiggle his shoulders around and you could tell there was something not right. And about the second or third time that he did that, he just called the trainer out, and it looks like a strained pectoral muscle. We don't know really how that's going to affect him, whether he's going to wind up on the DL, but you don't want that because he's wound up being the real guy that the
I mean, he's the guy you're hoping any of your guys turn into. I mean, I would love to see Dylan Bundy 12-3, 120 innings in, 20 starts. Nice little whip going on, 138 strikeouts and an ERA at 2.78. I mean, I'll take that. Give me that. Give me that at any point in any era of Major League Baseball. That is good stuff. And when you have that kind of a guy, look at what happened to Bryce Harper over the weekend, right? I mean, anytime your best players, I mean, Kershaw in L.A., I mean, when these things happen, they're devastating, especially when you're the Nationals and you're playing the last 60 games just to literally play out the string and waiting for, as I always say, game one, the most important game you're going to play, game one.
Yeah, and to Harper, since we're going to touch on him, he's saying he's not going to come back until he feels better, and I think Rizzo is of the mind that it's like, he kept it really open-ended. He believed that he was going to play before the end of the season, whatever that is for the Nationals. And right now, of course, if we started the postseason today, they would be in it. So, I mean, it is a concern. It's a deep concern for them because, look, I mean, ultimately, the Nationals, I think they really believed that they were not only going to win the NL East, they were going to be an NLCS contender or a World Series contender. And right now, I mean, if you have Harper out and you've got to go up against the Dodgers, although you mentioned Kershaw. Kershaw sounds like he's going to kind of pull out of it here. It looks like he's going to do 2 innings of simulation here next week. So I think that that doesn't help you if you're a Nationals fan either. So it's really wide open, Nestor. The AL situation, of course, it's all centered around the wild card right now. You look when you get 5 teams or so, or maybe even more, that could really be in it. It's going to be, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be who is ever streaky and gets hot right at the very end. Everybody's going to hang around right in that 1.5 to 2 game mark. And then whoever turns on the afterburners there at the end could be there. And that means Baltimore could really do something here. I just think that they're not going to – I don't think that they're going to make any grand move forward. I don't think that the Mariners are going to run ramshot over them, but they really are, given how the road record has been, it's a situation with them going up against Seattle. I think Seattle is going to try and make up for what happened here with, of course, this bad situation that they had with the Angels.
Well, and a lot of it's going to be scheduling at the end and who you're playing. I mean, I'll tell you this, the Orioles and the Rays are going to be playing the Yankees and the Red Sox, who also need these games. There's no doubt that if you're in the American League East and you're seeing each other, that's a mess. I mean, right off the bat, the other divisions have it easier, and that might be a pathway for the Minnesota Twins, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, and that's what's kind of made it, interesting. And then you've got the Royals right there, right? So the Twins and the Royals, although the Royals seem to have come back, they were really hot.
Oh my God! When we saw them a week and a half ago, they were the hottest team on earth, and the Orioles, sort of were the first ones to hit them in the knees. They looked like they were truly surging. And the one thing about them versus all the rest of these teams, they have pedigree, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that, they do. I mean, it's been kind of, I think the thing that's interesting about the Royals is that, they had an off season last year. There's no doubt about it. But I think that the situation that affected things in attendance right now, they're one of the biggest drags, or the biggest drag on attendance in Major League Baseball right now. Major League Baseball is going to just about bust even on attendance this year, it looks like. And that's with the Braves opening up a new ballpark and them just absolutely scorching attendance compared to last season. So, that's kind of an ancillary thing with the Royals. I think it's kind of interesting to watch. I look at this, even with the Yankees and the situation with the Red Sox. The Red Sox look fantastic right now, but it will be, Nestor. I mean, let's just go out into the future. If 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the end of the season, the Orioles go streaky, it would be, in my mind, it would be bad, because you go, man, there's no way they can sustain this. I just don't feel that there's any team hanging around in this wild card race that is so substantive that they can keep going. What's happening is there's a lot of teams getting dinged up. I mean, the Mariners, whether it's Felix or whether it's Iwakuma or whether it's maybe the situation with Paxson, I mean, they're going out there and they're using their also-rans. I mean, Miranda has not been sharp. The bullpen is getting stretched. If you're a Baltimore fan, and clearly we're talking on Baltimore radio right now, you hope that their pitching gets really stretched out. And that right there, if you're going to watch these games and stay up late, that's something to watch. See how they get to the pitching staff. I would expect, if they're smart, there's some patience at the plate and really trying to work pitch counts and trying to stretch out the starters and really trying to get to the bullpen.
That's not their game, by the way, just so you know that never happens around here. I mean, we've seen this lineup in various incarnations over the last 5 years. Through all 5 years of the success, that's just something they don't do. And it's something that really was their undoing in the ALCS against Kansas City to some degree, as it has been against teams with deeper pitching like Boston. They haven't played the smartest brand of baseball. I mean, they hit into a double play without any effort on Sunday. I've seen, Machado jaking it. I've seen Adam Jones jaking it during a long season. But, I've seen some signs for them, but they're in this. The owner keeps them in this. The general manager deals them into this. They're quite a unique operation around here by any standards in baseball, but nothing quite like what you cover down there in Miami, right? Went down for the All-Star game last last month. That thing's been rumored to sell 2 or 3 times to 2 or 3 different people. The only thing that's never been tied to this was the current owner, who is pretty universally disliked, and somehow this new Derek Jeter thing is rumored to sort of keep some of the old sheriffs around, right?
Yeah, and this is what I'm going to be writing about for Monday. So first of all, I gotta say, I thought I was really good. I had been batting 1,000 for 15 years on being able to basically handicap who was going to wind up with the team, and I didn't get this one. I really thought that the money wouldn't come together, but I think that baseball wanted it, and Jeter finally pulled it together. So it's clearly from the pedigree standpoint, Jeter is a great ad. I mean, there's all the history behind him being there. But one of the first things that came out of this when the news broke that they'd really kind of completed the deal, or they're in the throes of it, is that Jeter may retain David Sampson. Now, so for those that don't know, I mean, Sampson and Loria are kind of attached at the hip, and there's enough bad press around David Sampson, and certainly just the fact that there's ties to it, that I just see this as a horribly bad mistake.
There are a lot of businesses in South Florida that would never touch the Marlins. And, I get this from every aspect, especially when I was down there last month doing the All-Star Game stuff. They just dislike him so much that they just will not do any business with Loria or Sampson, who has really been the mouthpiece of this whole thing. I mean, if Angelos had anyone out in front of it for him in any substantial way, this is what it would look like around here.
Yeah, and that's probably a good way to look at it. I just think that, maybe I think that one of the things that everybody's kind of banning around is that they keep him there as a transitional thing. I don't know why you would do that, but
he dirties up any room you're in South Florida, kind of, sort of, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look at the real last sale that was close to this was the situation with Frank McCourt and the Dodgers, and that was, I mean, it was a complete clearing out. I mean, you brought in Stan Kasten, and it was a complete redo of the front office, and that was by design to try and basically immediately flush the bad taste in everybody's mouth that McCourt had done. And that's what I think you have to do. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do in Miami. If you want to try and bring those fans back, it's got to be more than just one guy and new owners. I mean, you really need to just get away from it completely. Now, look, they're going to keep Rich Hill, and I don't see anything wrong with that. It's on the general manager side, on the baseball side, I think it's fine. It was really all about ownership and how they empowered the team to do what they needed to do. And so I just think that the biggest problem has been with the sponsors, whether it's been sponsors or getting a naming rights deal. You're keeping the guy that was part of that process in place, and not just, he was basically the number 2 guy there. And I just think that this is a bad mistake. I hope that it's nothing more than transitional. And I hope, once again, of course, Jeter hasn't said anything. This is strictly from John Heyman, but John's pretty good about this stuff. So I just think that it's a bad start. If this is the first move, it's bad. If the second move actually would be pretty great. So the other rumor is there's discussion about taking the big water sculpture out of center field. And I describe, for those that, if we're baseball fans, they know what I'm talking about. But for those that don't, I described it as Busby Berkeley on acid. It's just, it's the craziest thing. When I first saw it, I was like, that is the most grotesque thing I have ever seen.
That stadium is such a hole for having been recently built, recently lauded. I almost made a special trip down there 5 years ago to go. I didn't make it till I was on my 30-30 2 years ago, and there's no reason to go there and watch a baseball game. Not on the field, not off the field. There's nothing spectacle about the building. It's sterile. It really does feel a ton like the Sky Dome to me. Like the vibe in there, the energy in there. That's how bad it is, man.
Well, and so to that, I think part of the energy is, you stick a bunch of people in there, and the energy changes quite a bit.
They had that big game down there. Was it Dominican U.S. or Puerto Rico U.S.? Yeah. There was a game down there that Machado hit the home runs in, right? It was a Dominican game, right?
Yeah, the WBC games were fabulous, And, I mean, certainly if you look at how it was for the All-Star game, it was pretty good. I remember when the ballpark was designed, at the time it was HOK, it's now Populous that did it. And I remember that there was a very clear, they wanted to break from really the quote-unquote retro design, and that really kind of lent itself to Miami. The color scheme was really tying very, closely into some of the Art Deco of it. The one thing that they have there that's fantastic is they have a bobblehead museum. I cannot stress how cool I think that is.
Okay. I did not know that. Okay.
The fish tanks behind home, I could do without that, although the Rays have the same kind of thing, only it's out in the outfield.
You know what I remember about that place, man? It smelled like sugar. It smelled like cotton candy and those praline pecans. It just smelled like confectionery sugar. It just smelled like sugar in the air. It smelled like a state fair, but without the sausage.
Going to the county fair?
Yeah, but without the sausage or the curds or anything that I would want to eat, Bowling alley pizza.
I will say this. So, to get back onto what Jeter has and the challenges that this new ownership is going to have. First of all, Jeter is going to run both the business and the baseball side of things, while he will not be the control guy. So his money guy will be that, because Jeter doesn't have that much skin in the game. So it's really going to be interesting to try. There are two core components that they have to get really addressed. One is their television deal, and the other is, I think, that they have to get a naming rights deal for that ballpark. They have to get some more sponsorship dollars in there. It's always going to be a problem for them if they're not getting the revenue streams that they need. And there's been some rumors, Forbes, I think, has them at the bottom, and I think that there's been enough discussion around it that they're probably at the bottom in terms of revenues, them and the Rays. So the television deal that's about ready to come up here pretty soon is critical to them. So how they address this, because look, you don't go buying this team for what they did, right, which is going to be right around, I think, $1.1 to $1.2 billion. You're just not going to be able to do something like that. You're thinking about it in terms of a long-term investment. They're going to initially, I'm sure, going to be running very tight, and that's going to be a problem. I mean, if you're a Marlins fan and you think that there's going to be some real quick turnaround like we saw in Los Angeles, well, I got news for you, it ain't happening. So it'll be everybody's going, I can't believe that. Do you really think the Marlins are worth that much money? And my answer is absolutely, when you finally dump it. In other words, the initial value of the club is not going to be that much. In terms of the growth, in terms of how much they've been able to turn these things over for, I mean, they're growing at an incredible rate of like 40 to 45% increases in terms of the sale value.
And these things don't sell right now. There are no franchises. All of these teams in all these leagues are making so much money right now due to web revenue, TV revenue, local revenue, selling tickets, all the above. It's rare that a team changes hands, right? So that's just a fact.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's really been it. I mean, the big thing that baseball had, and this is really surprising because Bud Selig never had a computer on his desk, and you'd have to fax him stuff, is that the MLB Advanced Media was the most brilliant thing that the owners ever bought into, and is really a testament to Bob Bowman, who really fired up the digital rights arm of baseball and turned it into a massive media company juggernaut, so much so that they spun off this BAMTech company and sold the rights, the majority rights to the Walt Disney Company. I mean, they were so good they fired up their own separate media company and got arguably the largest content provider in the world to come in there and jump on board with it so they can get involved in digital. So the money that flows into the owners now, that's a huge change. That's a huge change for guys like Angelos. It's a huge change for anybody that was not the New York Yankees or the Dodgers or a large market club. And that really has helped and made it to where owners now want to buy, not necessarily because of a team performing well. They're getting involved in this because they realize that there's this additional assets and they want to jump on board with this media rights money that now centrally flows in. If you have a down year at the gate, well, your media rights money helps bolster that and makes you want to invest. That's why baseball, I think, is in a much better shape than it has been in a long time. Certainly the Dodgers don't make it good from a large amounts of money flowing in, but you're really not seeing. You should no longer see major fire sales like we saw Loria do in terms of your player payroll because you've got so much money flowing in. The only bad thing would be teams like Detroit where they over-leverage themselves and then they wind up having to go ahead and dump at the end and not, if they miss their window.
Or San Diego a couple years ago when they spent a lot and
Yeah.
just said, nah, I don't think so. He is Maury Brown. He is Bizball Maury out on Twitter as well as at Forbes and a bunch of other places. He's our dear friend from Portland. The Orioles are out in Seattle, trying to pretend that the season's alive, and we'll play along as well. You can follow Maury at Bizball Maury on Twitter. Always a pleasure, my friend. Cool down out there, stop the fires, spread the love, and we'll check back in again a little later on. Hey, I want to argue with you about all these jersey nicknames and stuff next time too, okay?
You got it, man. We can argue. I got, like I was saying, I got a complete list of everybody that's there. I can give you some nuggets.
Somebody on Facebook last week had what's your favorite song by this band or that band, and somebody put AC/DC up. And, I know I've told you this, but Shoot the Thrill is my favorite AC/DC song. So the fact that you didn't name your band The Jack or Highway to Hell or, For Those About to Rock or Thunderstruck or something like that you named your band Shoot the Thrill, I think is cool.
Well, see, I was thinking about you, Nestor. It was one of those things.
Well, I mean, was there a second place or was that just the obvious choice for
Yeah, there
an
was
AC/DC?
a second place. It was Problem Child.
You were going to be
That was the second place.
All right.
But it worked out because, the funny thing about it is we probably do – I mean, we have it split pretty evenly between the Bon and Brian eras, but we really slay the Brian Johnson stuff. And so, I mean, we love the Bon stuff, but our singer sounds more like Brian Johnson. So, it kind of worked out best that way.
I am like evil. I get under your skin just like a bomb that's ready to blow. I love it. So, I'm just reading the lyrics here off of Shoot the Thrill. Sometimes heavy metal lyrics are better sung than read.
Yeah, they are.
Hey, man, great to have you on, Maury. Be well.
Hey, man, it's always my pleasure. Thanks a lot.
You got it. Maury Brown. He is Bizball Maury, one of our dear friends from Forbes and one of our Twitter pals. Nobody understands the business of baseball better than him. Nobody loves baseball more than Maury, who oftentimes, yes, he makes that trip from Portland up to Seattle. He was the guy trying to get baseball to Portland. Imagine how that would have changed had the Montreal Expos had gone to Portland instead of Washington, D.C. They'd be making less money, I would say that. All right, and Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That's digitally, and it's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Our tech service, hopefully a little more quiet than it was at the end of last week. With the Alex Lewis news and all the bad news on the Ravens side, but we're trying to keep it cool. But breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.